Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget you can read my work on ESPN.com. Today, I'm joined by ESPN NFL draft analyst Jordan Reid. He joins me every year at this time, and it's one of my favorite podcasts because he's very knowledgeable, putting a ton of work on this stuff. And so I wanted to bring just kind of at least introduce some of the prospects that you need to watch and focus on throughout the offseason leading up to the draft, of course, in late April. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to go between now and then. And, you know, of course, free agency, and do they actually make a big trade to do something with that first pick? I don't know, but you're going to hear all that speculation. But I just want to at least get you situated with, where is the draft strong? Where could they take an offensive lineman and feel good about it? Do you have to take one in the first round? How deep is this? What positions are the deepest, and where's the value for some of these spots? So we go over pretty much every position. So anyways, stay tuned for that in a minute. So just one little couple things. We actually want two things on that. I did ask Jordan some questions by some of the gold members or some of the club members. Angela Rowe, Brian Johnson, thank you for your questions. You got them asked to Jordan Reid. So, and he gave some answers to you guys. So I appreciate those questions. If you want to become a club member, you know the drill. Go to the Empire Media YouTube page, see the word join, click on there, go from there. For you club members, I am going to be doing a private Zoom next Wednesday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time. So Wednesday, 7 o'clock Eastern time, we'll do a private Zoom. You can ask whatever questions, and, you know, hopefully I get through as many as you can. Please join me for those. I enjoy doing those. It's a good opportunity to maybe just to have a little bit, get some of the questions you want to know answered. So again, join us for that next Wednesday, 7 o'clock Eastern time. So, and you gold members, I'll be doing a private Zoom for you the next night on Thursday. So anyway, stay tuned for all that. I really don't have much else to say, folks. It's the off season. There's not a lot going on right now, but I do want to get you some information. So here's my conversation with ESPN NFL draft analyst Jordan Reid. You sign up for something, forget about it after the trial period ends, then you're charged month after month after month. The subscriptions are there, but you're not using them. In fact, I just learned that 85% of people have at least one paid subscription going unused each month. Thanks to Rocket Money, I can see all my subscriptions in one place and cancel the ones I'm not using anymore, and now I'm saving more money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/gameon today. That's rocketmoney.com/gameon. rocketmoney.com/gameon. All right, Jordan. So what a difference that Jaden Daniels makes. Last year, I'm talking to you about the number 2 pick, and this year it's 29. How about that? Any surprise at all by what we all saw from Jaden this year for you?
I think how quickly he translated, and with rookie quarterbacks, there's always going to be that rookie wall, or there's some
Right.
phases of where they go through of where, like, man, you're like, he's eventually going to decline, or he's going to show that he is a rookie, and we just didn't really see that. And I mean, there were some moments of where he did look like a rookie, but his poise and him just having answers to everything, especially blitzes in those big time moments, I think that was the greatest thing I should say about Jaden Daniels in his rookie year overall.
It's just, to me, and like you said, it was, I really liked watching him before the draft. And then the more I was around him, the more I'm like, he's going to be good. But this good, and taking the franchise where he did was the part that's like, wow, who saw that coming? Like that was the hard part. See, what did you think about the rest of the rookie class? Just some of the guys like, Sam Still, Ben Sinnott, Luke McCaffrey, Brandon Coleman.
Yeah, I mean, the theme of their first draft really was to just take good football players
Right.
outside of the quarterback. Of course, everybody knew that they were going to take a quarterback, but they had so many holes on the roster. You could tell that they were just taking good football players. And whether it was Samer Steele, Johnny Newton, Snot,
Right.
I mean, there's so many different players of where they just took players that were really high on their board. And that's what you want to do, especially when you have so many darts at the dartboard. You want to make sure that you get players that can contribute right away. And that's what you saw in their draft class. Once Johnny Newton did get fully healthy, I thought he did a really good job of, finding himself in that rotation.
Yeah.
And, they have two really good defensive tackles already. So him showing flashes this early on with Allen and Payne mixed in, I thought that was really good. But how about Mikey Samerstiel, man? Like
Yeah.
he was one of the guys that I loved in the pre-draft process. The big debate about him was, is he going to play nickel or is he going to play outside? Him holding up this well, especially on the outside, I think that was one of the most surprising things for him in his rookie season. But he was terrific this year too.
Yeah, and what is it that stood out for you about him pre-draft? Because I mean, getting to meet him, mature, competitive, all that. But what stood out to you?
Just the physicality and what I like to call the dog mentality that he plays with. And, him being a smaller corner, he never saw himself as such. He saw himself as a 6'1", 6'2" type of corner. And that's exactly the type of physicality that he plays with. And he plays with so much heart. But the thing that showed up frequently on his tape was that his ability to make plays. That's something that was frequent in his rookie season as well. His ball skills, him being a former receiver, and when he came to Michigan, that's something that you definitely have to take into the equation when you're evaluating these corners, especially when you're talking about their ability to generate and create turnovers. That's something that he was able to do consistently at Michigan. And then the cherry on top was him being physical and then the inside and outside versatility that he had as well.
And little quick, kind of quick on Coleman and then Sinnott. I don't know how much you're able to watch these guys this year. For you, do you see Coleman still is, he played left tackle this year. Do you still see him at that position? Do you see him as they get through this draft, perhaps moving him either inside or to right tackle?
Well, Jaden Daniels obviously was the best rookie, but I think the biggest surprise to me personally was Coleman holding
Okay.
up at left tackle his rookie year, just because we were having this debate after the draft was, are they really going to start a rookie
Right.
at left tackle? And they ended up throwing him out there, and he did pretty well for the most part. So, I mean, if he continues to play well, why not leave him at that spot? Just because I always have the debate of, is this guy a tackle or is he a guard? If you're having that debate, I've always had the feeling that let them fail or show them that they
Yeah.
can't play tackle first before you move them inside, just because tackles are obviously a premium position. So him playing so well at that left tackle spot, I see no reason to move him.
And it's funny because I think what he did, the same with Mikey Sanders still, they give you flexibility. If you can find someone better, great, but you don't have to necessarily replace them. You know what I mean? So like, because
Yeah,
they showed
absolutely.
like Mike showed he can play it outside. Brandon showed he could play left tackle. If you get someone better, great, you can move him and strengthen elsewhere. If not, then you can roll with what you got. What about Ben Sinnott?
I thought he would be a little bit better than what he was. I thought he would factor a little bit more in the offense than what he did. And you can see they have a clear long-term plan for him as far as where they're going to play him. He's one of those players that you really can move all over. There's some teams that actually had him graded as a fullback. So you can play him at that fullback
Right.
spot. You can play him at tight end. You can flex him out wide. You can play him in the slot. I think there's more to his game than what he showed as a rookie. But I think they're going to factor him more a little bit more next year.
All right, so let's look ahead to this year. And I have a couple, we have some club members. I wanted to get some of I wanted them to ask you some questions too. So I got two from them real quick. Angela wants to know and things that a lot of people are asking too. When you look at the strength of this draft and you look at what the Commanders needs, what would you look to fill first? And is it O-line, D-line, or I'm always a big believer in best player available, which I think they are too, but how would you assess?
So if we're just strictly going off of the strengths of this draft class and matching it up with what the Commanders need, I think they need an edge rusher. I mean, I think that's easily, along with wide receiver, their easiest position as far as where they have a need at. So at 29, if there's a edge rusher that they have graded very highly on the board, I think you just take the best player available that makes the most sense from an edge rush standpoint. Now, the great thing about having a phenomenal rookie quarterback is that you're in position to where you can truly take the best player available just because you have so many various holes on both sides of the ball. Now with Jaden Daniels into the equation, you can go ahead and get him a weapon if you want to, if you have a receiver graded very highly. In my first mock draft, I actually had them taking Emeka Ibuka, the wide receiver from Ohio State. So if an Emeka Ibuka or a Matthew Golden from Texas is on the board, if you have them graded or I have him graded that top 20 to top 25 range, I think you go ahead and take them. That's assuming that all of the edge rushers that you have graded highly on the board are off the board. But if you have somebody that is graded highly on the defensive side at that edge rusher spot, I don't think you could go wrong with taking either position.
And I'm going to get to some edge rushers in a minute, but with Egbuka, like you said, you had projected him there, or at least mocked in the mock. Do you see him strictly inside? He can. I know he did both at Ohio State. Do you see him strictly inside? And what do you like about him in the slot?
I think he can play both, honestly, John. I think he can play inside, he can play outside. There's so many various positions that he can play. He kind of reminds me of Robert Woods. He played that Woods role in the Ohio State offense, and he gives you a lot of value in the run blocking game. He can play inside, he can play outside, but everything that he does is just smooth and effortless. And it's funny, and people may call it a lazy comparison, but he's exactly like Jackson Smith and Jigba when he was coming out of Ohio State. They're literally Control C, Control V, copy and paste. They're the exact same player, and we see the success that he has gone on to have in Seattle already. So he's one of those players that doesn't have a lot of holes in their game, and he's not going to have the physical traits that a lot of these other receivers have that have come into the league over the past few years. He's not going to run very fast. He's probably a 4.5 guy, a low 4.5 to high 4.4 type of player. He's not going to jump out of the gym. But when you turn the film on and you see him constantly getting open and creating separation, and he's done it at a high level every year that he's been at Ohio State, he's the leader in the clubhouse of what I like to call just draft good football players.
And it's funny because I'm with you. Like you, if you want a smart football team, you draft smart players. You want tough, you smart and tough, whatever. But if let's say you're looking for speed, like if they want to add a little bit more speed on the outside because they have a couple guys free agents, they might not be back. De'Ami Brown, Noah Brown, not sure. Is there someone who would fit in there? Does Golden, does Burden, Burden is, he's got some dynamic aspects to his game. What do you think about that?
Well, there isn't any true like speed demons in this draft class like we've seen in years past. They're more so in the second or third round of this year's draft class. But if they're looking to take somebody in the second or the third round, somebody like an Isaiah Bond out
Yeah,
of Texas, who had a bit of a down year last year. If you remember at Alabama, he was the guy that caught that miracle 4th and 31 in the
right.
corner of the end zone from Jalen Milroe. But he was really productive when he was at Alabama. Last year, he battled some lower body injuries that really slowed him down. And, he just wasn't consistent enough. But I think he's by far one of the faster receivers in this draft class. Another is Ty Felton from Maryland, who's a local guy who got off to a really strong start. And then Maryland has some inconsistent moments at quarterback that really slowed down his production. And he's probably, late third, fourth round guy. That's where I have him projected right now. So those are two speed guys that really would make a lot of sense if they want to take a receiver more so on day two.
Okay, and I got another question from Brian Johnson. Said, as far as the O-line goes, where is there more depth in the later rounds? Is it tackle or interior? And where would you be more comfortable taking a lot? At which spot would you be most comfortable taking a guy in the later rounds on the offensive line?
Well, the funny thing about this class is that we don't have a lot of true offensive tackles in this class. So you're kind of on the fringe of, is this guy a guard or is he a tackle? And that goes back to what we talked about with Brandon
Right.
Coleman. I'm going to let these guys fail at tackle first before I slide them inside. So there's going to be back and forth debates about, which guy should be a tackle, which guy should be a guard. But for me personally, there's more so guards than more tackles in this draft class. So I think it's more deeper along the interior than an offensive tackle.
So, and a couple guys I'm curious about too in the first round, Josh Simmons. And I think you
Yeah.
had him on your board. You had him, and for people who don't know, you just put out your top 50, right?
Hmm.
And I think was he 11th on your board?
Yeah.
All right. Coming off the ACL, the tough knee injury, is he a guy? What would it take for him to slide to 29? I guess it'd be bad medical reports, in which case there'd be some trouble. But could you see him sliding that far down?
Well, it's possible just because everybody's going to have their various opinion about where you take a guy that only played 6 games last year, especially when he's coming off of a knee injury as well. But we've seen in years past, ACLs are kind of like sprained ankles
Right.
nowadays when these guys are coming back so fast. And not to say that's going to happen to Josh Simmons. I still value him very highly just based off what he showed prior to the knee injury. Excuse me. And I know he didn't play a lot of guys during that lead up just because Ohio State's schedule wasn't very good
Right.
early on. But the one premier player that he did go up against consistently was Mike Green of Marshall,
Right.
another player that's probably going to go somewhere inside the top 20. And I thought he played really well against him. But Simmons, he had a breakout year last year, this past season, I should say, just because he was really inconsistent his junior season. But this past year's tape was really impressive to me. He has experience on both sides. He played right tackle at San Diego State before he came over to Ohio State, and then Ohio State he switched to the left side. So we're talking about a player that can play on either side. He can play right or left tackle. He has really good strength. He's one of the bigger offensive tackles in this year's class at about 6'5", 320, 325 pounds. It's just a matter of how comfortable you feel about the knee, and everything that I've heard, the recovery is going great. So I'm comfortable with having him and projecting him that high on my big board at number 11.
So two other tackles, in the possible his first round guys, Kelvin Banks and Josh Connolly from Oregon. Like how do you assess them? And I think based on where you had Connolly ranked or in your board, he could be there at 29. So, and you never know how as you know, you
Right.
never know how somebody's always going to fall. But how do you assess those guys?
Yeah, I mean, very similar tier for me. I have them at my third and my fourth ranked offensive tackles right now. So they're in a very similar tier as far as guys that could go somewhere inside of that top 25 range right now. But Banks, a player that's been as consistent as they come. I mean, as soon as he stepped foot in Austin, he was their starting left tackle, and he's just been a guy that's been able to erase everything at that spot ever since he's been on campus. It's just a matter of, once again, similar to a lot of other guys in this draft class, do you see him as a guard or a tackle? Once again, I would let him play tackle first and show me that he is not capable of playing tackle first before kicking him inside. But speaking to some people inside the league, they feel he would be better suited inside
Okay.
right away. So it's just a matter of how comfortable you feel about him on the outside. Once again, I would let him play offensive tackle first. And then with Connolly, he's a little bit more of a developmental guy, in my opinion, just because he has to gain some strength. And you saw that at the Senior Bowl. The first day, I thought he had some challenges, but the second and the third day, he really settled in and he got better as the week gone along. I believe he was voted by his peers as the best offensive lineman at the Senior Bowl. So he's one player that I think he can play right away, but there's going to be some bumps and bruises that you have to go through just because he has to get it a little bit stronger and add some bulk. But you talk about the foundation that you love to see in an offensive tackle. I think he does have that.
And what is it that jumps out with you in that regard?
With Connolly,
Yeah.
it's just the strength. Excuse me. It's just the overall profile and the baseline level traits that he has. I think he needs to add strength, I
Okay.
should say. And you could see that on his tape of where, there's some moments of where he does lose the strength battle. And he's not really a guy that's going to displace a lot of people in the run game. But you see the contact at the point of attack, and he does a great job of running his feet on contact too. So the baseline level traits that he has, and then just the upside that he has, I think he's going to be one of the better offensive tackles in this group when we look back on it 3 or 4 years from now.
But it's funny because when you're describing these guys outside of a couple, it's why you would look at Coleman like, can you leave him at left tackle versus because the debate about him last year was exactly what you're having
Yep.
this year with some of these first round guys, right?
Yeah, and I mean Coleman was a terrific athlete as well.
Yeah.
That kind of gave you a little bit, it made you a little bit more comfortable as far as keeping him at offensive tackle, just because you don't really want to put those bad athletes out on the island,
Right.
just because offensive tackle, we know there's a lot of one-on-one battles with that. So I think that's why they were so comfortable with leaving him at left tackle, just because he showed a lot of good things when he was coming out, and then also just the athleticism and the upside that he has too.
So let's look at corner because I think they got Mikey and they got Marshawn Lattimore, but
Mhm.
there's still going to be questions about Lattimore, and it's always a position to me. If you can get a good guy there, you get a good guy there. So there are some interesting guys at that spot, and that especially on your board too. How would you assess the corner class if and especially like they like to use press man, and et cetera. So how would you assess that group and who might be a good fit for them?
Yeah, so I have Travis Hunter as a corner, but we're not even going to waste time talking
Right,
about
right.
him
Yeah,
about
I
him
don't.
just in
I
case
don't.
he does
I got a
something
hunch
really
he's not
crazy.
falling to 29. Yeah.
Just in case something really crazy happens at the combine. I'll be really surprised if he falls that far. But after that, you're getting into the cluster of Benjamin Morrison of Notre Dame.
Yep.
Just depends on how you feel about the medicals with him. Obviously, he only played the first few games of the year, and then he went out with the hip injury. But prior to that point, he was seen as a mid to late first round pick as well. So if they're comfortable with the medicals, I definitely think he would be a really good fit in Dan Quinn's defense. And then looking at the cluster after that, I have four guys really clumped together on my big board. And the first one is Savon Revel of ECU. He's another that suffered a knee injury
Yeah.
this past season, actually in practice. But prior to that point, he was playing really good ball. But as far as the size that they look for, or what Dan Quinn has looked for in years
Right.
past, even going back to his days with the Cowboys, Revel does definitely have that. Maxwell Harrison from Kentucky is another that I think they'll have a lot of interest in. I thought it was really good during the first 2 days that he practiced at the Senior Bowl. And then the last one, who was a bit of a sleeper about a month ago, was my sleeper, but now he's not a sleeper anymore, is Azariah
I knew
Thomas
that. Yeah, I knew
of
you were.
Florida State. I
Yeah.
think they're going to like him quite a bit. He checks a lot of boxes that Dan Quinn and Adam Peters have looked for in previous stops that they have had.
Yeah, because he's got the size, press man, like he fits that profile, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. And I mean, he can play press man, he can play off, he can play a zone as well, has really good eyes, and he'll only be 20 years old on draft day as well. So there's a lot of intrigue with the upside with that. And I had an opportunity to see him down at the Senior Bowl too, and I thought he was absolutely terrific down there.
And Hairston is a guy that I think you had on your board basically outside the first round. Is he a guy that is he going to go higher than people anticipate, or could he fall? Like if they get some other spot in the first round, and you still want to corner the second round because he's good in man coverage. Is he a guy that might drop in the second round, or is he going to go higher than people anticipate?
I think once he's tested, he's probably going to go much higher than
Okay,
what a lot
that's
of
what I
people are
thought.
projecting right now. I think I had him somewhere in the early 40s in my updated top 50.
Yeah.
But after he tests at the combine, I think he's going to be definitely a late first round pick without question.
What about this running back class? Because again, that's another spot that they're going to want to address.
Yeah.
There are some intriguing ones here. Where's a sweet spot? Like if you don't want to take one in the first, second round, where is a sweet spot, and who are guys that you would say these would be good fits?
I think that second or that third round pick is probably where they'll look to take one. And in this draft class, I mean, it's absolutely loaded.
Yeah.
So just to peek at my big board, I have 33 draftable grades on running backs right now. And the last time that we got 30 drafted was that 2017 class that had Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette. I believe Dalvin Cook was in that draft class as well. There was a lot of really good running backs in that draft class. Not saying this running back group is as top heavy as that one, but when we're talking about the back and the middle and the top end, or excuse me, the middle and the back end depth, I should say, of this year's draft class, I think there's a lot of depth in this class overall. So I'm looking at guys that they could take in the second round. Travion Henderson is one that really piques my interest, especially at the back end of the second round. I have him ranked, I believe, as my number 46 overall prospect. But what I believe is going to happen, especially on day two of the draft, once Ashton Genty gets drafted in the first round, I definitely believe he's going to go on day one. But there's a lot of teams that's going to be waiting to see when that first running back gets selected off of the
Right.
board. And then there's just going to be an avalanche of running backs that get selected just because it's such a really good group.
And because you got the Hampton kid from Carolina, you got
Yeah.
the running back from Iowa. Like how do you and you Judkins,
Mhm.
from Ohio State. How do you know who might be that next guy off the board? Is it just going to be team specific, or do you think one stands above?
Yeah, and this is the tough part, John, as far as ranking these guys from a media standpoint, just because we're not projecting these guys in a specific scheme. So it's more
Right.
so of whichever one fits the traits and the characteristics that you're looking for. So if I was evaluating or if I worked for a zone scheme team, I would look at a guy like a Caleb Johnson of Iowa, a Travion Henderson, who fit my scheme a little bit more. But if I'm more of a man gap power type of team, then I would look at Omarion Hampton and Quinshad Judkins. So
Right.
that's the tough part of ranking these guys from a media perspective. But all those guys are in that second round tier, that second round bucket for me.
What are some spots third, fourth round that you feel it has good depth that might be again like and it's funny because I don't want to bring up needs for this team because I feel like their philosophy is fill needs in free agency, draft good players. But where is the good depth in those middle rounds?
As far as any position or just running
Any
back.
any position.
Well, I mean, running back. I think that's the obvious one.
Yeah.
Defensive line is loaded as well. And, there's some wide receivers that are really intriguing in this year's draft, I believe, in the third or the fourth round range. And it's not the classes that we have seen it from a top heavy standpoint. There's not a lot of instant impact type of playmakers in this draft class. Like we have seen these guys come in the league and, multiple top 15 and top 20 type of picks. But I believe there's some depth in this wide receiver class. And then the running back class we talked about already in defensive line as well.
And I was going to ask too about defensive tackle because
Yeah.
you brought Payne and Allen, and there is a chance that one of them or that John Allen, because they could get out of his contract, save 17 million on the cap. So it wouldn't be shocking if they moved on. I don't know if they will, but if that's the case, are there any defensive tackles worth drafting in the first round, or would you wait until later to get one?
I would wait just because I don't think they have a immediate need at
Right.
interior defensive line. Just because I mean Johnny Newton, I had him rated as a first round pick last year.
Yeah.
I think the world of him once he got healthy. I thought he showed some really good flashes and spurts. So I don't think they have a super huge need at that point. But I mean, if you're looking for some third or fourth round guys
Yeah.
too, that really would pique my interest. Just looking at my list, Jordan Phillips out of Maryland, he's a name that I
Yeah.
definitely would circle. I thought he was one of the better performances at the Shrine Bowl last week, and he'll only be 20 years old during the draft as well. So a super intriguing, really explosive athlete, really stout at the point of attack, really good run defender, but is electric as a pass rusher as well. I think he has NFL ready strength levels already walking through the door as well. So we're not talking about a developmental guy. I believe from day one he's going to be able to help you. So let's say they do part ways with one of the star defensive tackles that they do have. Jordan Phillips is one of those guys that can come in and contribute right away. And another is CJ West out of Indiana. I think he's another guy that will probably go in that fourth or fifth round range. He was another player that I thought was really impressive down at the Shrine Bowl as well.
One of the guys they took last year too, Jordan McGee. What did you
Yeah.
think of him? And like, because they have a decision to make with Bobby Wagner. I don't know that they would entrust Jordan yet with the Mike spot, but can you see him in that role in the NFL?
Eventually, I still think he has a lot to prove as far as what he can do on the
Yeah.
next level. He was really raw coming out as well. We're talking about a player that was a really good athlete, but I thought as far as reading his keys, stepping downhill and being physical, he had some question marks in that area. But he was more so of a developmental guy, and it was great that they got a Bobby Wagner in just so he
Yeah.
can learn from an established veteran like that that's done it at the highest level. So I think he's more so of a long-term developmental piece that you continue to play on special teams, but hopefully you can get something out of on the back end of his rookie contract.
Last spot, defensive end. I forgot to bring up edge rusher because you brought that up, and that is a
Yeah.
spot that I think they're going to look for. And who are they're a couple intriguing guys, James Pierce, Mike Green
hmm
at that 29th area. Whom, if how do you assess that group, and what the value might be at 29 compared to some other spots?
Well, the great thing about this class is that there's so many different shapes and sizes of these guys. It really, once again, similar to running back, it just goes back to the certain type of scheme that you're running. And you mentioned too already, Mike Green, James Pierce Jr. Those guys are more so of your 3-4 stand-up outside linebackers, and either one can play with their hand in the dirt. But you want those guys playing forward. You want them rushing the passer, just because that's their A-level trait. And both of those guys, they're going to be freak athletes. They're going to be freak testers. And I don't even think either one are going to be there for them in the first
Yeah.
round. Honestly, crazier things have happened. If I had to guess, Pierce will probably be the one that potentially is available for them at 29. And I mean, if he's there for you, I think you turn in the card right away just
Okay.
because he helps you right away in the pass rush department.
And it's funny because, like, with they play such a hybrid scheme at times, but Dante Fowler, they would consider an outside linebacker
Yeah.
who really worked with defensive ends. But could you see them in it? And Dante had a really good year. I don't know if he'll be back. Is that kind of the role you would envision? Because Dante, they use standing up a lot too, but he's almost always rushing the passer.
Yeah, I think that would be fair. I think going ahead and getting a succession plan to him, and I know DQ absolutely loves Fowler. He literally takes him everywhere that
Right.
he's been and everywhere he goes. But having a succession plan for him in place with a Mike Green or a James Pierce Jr. or somewhere along those lines who are very similar type of players, I think that would be a great plan.
What do you like about Pierce? What jumps out to you?
Just the explosion that he plays with. And, he's a little bit undersized. He's probably going to come in at probably around 240 to
Right.
245 pounds. But I mean, and I wrote this in my scouting report about him. He makes blockers really exit their as far as with their hands. He makes their technique go to the wayside right away. Like there's retreating, there's people literally backpedaling trying to keep up with him on tape. He's one of those dudes that he strikes fear into blockers. Whenever you're lined up with that guy across from you, it makes a lot of those blockers go, oh man, here we go. I'm not looking forward to facing this guy. So from a pass rush department, that's really his A-level trait or something that he brings right away. From a run defense standpoint, I think he's very underrated as a run defender. He has really strong hands. He's really stout as far as setting an edge, but he does need to get better in his lower body strength, especially when facing those one-on-one battles against NFL level offensive tackles. I think that's where he does show a little bit of a weakness, but as far as he does need to get better in that department from a run defense standpoint, from an NFL level standpoint, is what I'm saying. From a college level standpoint, I thought he was fine, but things are going to be a little bit more challenging for him as far as teams running right at him on the NFL level.
And I forgot to add one more, guards, because the interior, and we've talked about tackle guard spots, but are
hmm
there some guards that would be intriguing? Because They have Allegretti at left guard. It wouldn't
Mhm.
shock me if they wanted to get somebody else in there, whether to challenge or to, to bump, whatever. Is there how is this group, and you talked about it earlier, but is there anybody that stands out that you look at, this is a guy to watch in the middle rounds, maybe?
Well, there's only two marquee guys in this group that I have graded inside of my top 20, and I actually have Will Campbell of LSU graded as a guard
Okay.
already. So he's one I don't think is going to be, excuse me, available to them inside. I think he's going to end up being a top 12 pick, and then Tyler Booker is the other. I think he's going to end up being a top 20 pick. But after that, you're getting into the guys that potentially play, or excuse me, play tackles in college, and
Right.
there's a lot of people that feel like they should play inside at guard. Now you're talking about Jonas Savania from Arizona, Donovan Jackson at Ohio State, Emory Jones at LSU, and then Marcus Mbo out of Purdue as well. All guys that primarily play tackle in college, but there's a lot of people that feel like they project better inside. So it's just a matter of how they feel about those guys, whether they're a tackle or a guard. But I mean, if you're a team like Washington that wants to protect your franchise quarterback, just go ahead and take those guys. And I
Yeah.
mean, if you want to eventually play them at tackle, the worst thing that could happen is you already have competition at either spot with Coleman and then also some of the other guys that you have on the roster. But if you feel more comfortable playing them at guard, now you have even more depth at those spots.
Last question. How challenging was this quarterback class to rank, and how does it compare? Like, everything I've always heard, Jordan, is that, the top quarterbacks in this class would have been like fifth or sixth in
Yeah.
last year's group. Is that kind of how you feel? And how would, I know you have Cam as your first guy, but
Mhm.
what do you think of this class?
Well, it's nothing like last year's class. I
No.
will say that the top end guys at last year's class, it was really challenging as far as who you're going to put at the top. But I think the clear top three were obviously Caleb and also Jaden and Drake. I think those were clearly your top three guys. And then after that, did you want Nix, McCarthy, Penix? The list goes on and on. After that, as far as how you felt about last year's class, but this year's class is pretty easy to rank, in my opinion, just because there's top two guys, and then it's just a
True.
matter of what you
True.
want after that. I believe Ward and Sanders are easily the top two. After that, you're getting into, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers. The list goes on and on as far as some of the other guys and how you feel about them in this class. I think those guys, in my opinion, are harder to rank in this year's
Yeah.
draft class as opposed to the top two in this year's class, just because there's such a distinct, there's a clear-cut top two in this year's draft class as opposed to depending on how you feel about the quarterbacks 3 through 7 in this year's class.
I apologize because I did have the tight end class. How is this group, and what kind of depth is there?
I've been praising it all
Yeah.
fall and
Good.
now
It's good.
into the winter and into the spring. I'm going to continue to praise it as well. I think this class was really underrated coming into the year, and now we're starting to see some of the depth and some of the guys really mature in this year's class. And I mean, at the top, I think the obvious one to me, in my opinion, is Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. I think those are your clear top two. And then after that, a guy that's really emerged, or two, I should say, really emerged in this class is, Elijah Arroyo out of Miami, and
Yeah.
then also Mason Taylor out of LSU. Those are two guys that have really emerged in this year's draft class. But after that, I mean, just looking at my draft board, Gunnar Helm out of Texas, Aranda Gasson the second out of Syracuse, Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon, Harold Fenton Jr. out of Bowling Green. There's so many different types and varieties in this draft class. I think we're going to see those guys really fly off the board like running backs on in the middle stages of day two.
Jordan, you're the best. I appreciate your time as always. And I love that. I love seeing your star continue to rise every year. So thank you very much, man.
Thanks as always, John. It's always a pleasure joining you.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Jordan for joining me. And thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Monday with another episode. So I'll talk to you next time.